right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of Discovering New Dragons. Join me as we discover what may become your new favorite RPG. So, today, we are going to be venturing into the world of bending. But not like yoga stuff. I'm talking about, doing cool martial arts stuff and throwing boulders in people's faces and like using water to freeze it and then exploding fire everywhere and sparky boom man and all these cool things. I am talking about Avatar Legends, the RPG. Now, quick reminder, if you do enjoy this stuff, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All those things are super important. Now, let's talk about this. So, the first thing that we need to talk about is the history of Avatar Legends. Avatar Legends, obviously, it's a role-playing game. It is an officially licensed role-playing game that adapts Avatar The Last Airbender and Avatar Legend of Korra material into an actual role-playing game. And it kind of surprised a lot of people because back in... I have to find the right page. Back in August of 2021, or a little before that actually, they announced that they were going to be running a Kickstarter for this new RPG that adapted Avatar The Last Airbender and Avatar The Legend of Korra, the two Nickelodeon cartoon series, into an RPG. And they called it Avatar Legends. And August 3rd, I believe, is when it started, of 2021, was when the Kickstarter started. And the very first update on the Kickstarter, which is now almost 3 years old, the very first update says funded in 16 minutes. Avatar Legends was not only funded insanely quickly, but throughout the 30-day Kickstarter, it raised about $9.53 million. And the original goal was $50,000. They wanted $50,000 to finish designing it, get everything kind of built and printed and all that stuff. And they ended up getting $9.53 million. And at the time, I don't know if it's been beaten yet. I'd have to actually... part of me wonders if Colville... No, Colville didn't reach that much. So I don't know if it's been beaten since then. But at the time, it held the record as the highest funded campaign for tabletop games on Kickstarter. Oh, and I guess Colville couldn't do that because I think he did Indiegogo. So it was massively successful because Avatar The Last Airbender was an amazing TV show. And The Legend of Korra was also a TV show. It wasn't bad in any way, shape, or form. Actually, the first two series are really good. The third series was a little bit weird, and then the fourth series was just like, well, we decided to make a fourth. We needed to make a fourth series, and really, it falls off really fast in the fourth series. But it's incredibly beloved by fans. It was critical success, so obviously there was a lot of interest in the game itself. The other thing that's kind of unique about, or rather not unique about Avatar Legends, is it is under the kind of umbrella term of powered by the apocalypse. If you've never heard that phrase before, back in 2010, I'm going to mispronounce this name, Megui and Vincent Baker created and published a game system called Apocalypse World. And since then, tons of RPGs using either the same mechanics or relatively similar mechanics to the Apocalypse have shown up. and they all use this blanket term of powered by the apocalypse. Now, something that's kind of, I don't know, weird about powered by the apocalypse is normally games that use role-playing games that use another game's mechanics are not new. The open game license from Wizards of the Coast that came started in the third edition created an entire genre of they were just effectively called D20 games. Because you use a D20 and then so everything from if you've ever played the Star Wars The Old Republic or what is it, Star Wars, not The Old Republic, that's the MMO. Knights of the Old Republic. That were the games. So if you ever played the Knights of the Old Republic games, they actually used the tabletop rules of a Star Wars RPG that came out back in the early 2000s. That was a D20 game. It was published under the open game license, and if you actually look when you're building your characters in that, like it's basically Star Wars D&D. They use the same. They actually have the same feats in a lot of places. Like you do get dual wielding and improved dual wielding and stuff like that. So all that stuff existed. So normally there will be some kind of agreement. Like there was the open game license for D&D the third edition, and then again in for the fifth edition they created a new one, and now it's all Creative Commons. The Cypher system has their own kind of OGL system. So it's very, very common. But normally what happens with one of these things where you're basically using another game's mechanics to make your own game is you have to use the mechanics. That's the whole point of it. Powered by the Apocalypse, the vast majority of games that use the Powered by the Apocalypse name, including Avatar Legends, are basically kind of reskinned and retooled formats of Apocalypse World. They work very, very similarly. You have moves, you roll 2d6 for all of your things, and it's a kind of class-based system. In Avatar Legends, they call them playbooks, but it's effectively that. However, not all Powered by the Apocalypse games actually have to use those mechanics. According to Vincent Baker, one of the people that made it, I'm just going to read their particular quote that I'm getting off of their Wikipedia page, which is, Powered by the Apocalypse, quote, isn't the name of a category of games, a set of games features, or the thrust of any game's design. It's the name of Meg's and my policy concerning others' use of our intellectual property and creative work. Its use in a game's trade dress signifies only that the game was inspired by Apocalypse World in a way that the designer considers significant, and that it follows our policy with respect to others' use of our creative work. So theoretically, Powered by the Apocalypse does not mean the same as like a D20 game where you already know what the mechanics are going to be because it's based on D&D the third edition. This could just mean that Powered by the Apocalypse was a major inspiration in some way, shape, or form. Now, me personally, I find that to be a really, really weird kind of hill to die on for Powered by the Apocalypse, or they're claiming basically that, hey, you know, you can just say that Powered by the Apocalypse inspired you without using anything from our game and technically any of our copywritten mechanics. And we can still claim that you have to follow the rules for doing something that's powered by the apocalypse. I find that kind of weird, but whatever. I don't know if they've ever actually went after anyone legally for using something and not following their rules or anything like that. I don't know anything about them. But that's where Powered by the Apocalypse came from, and that's where and that's what powered Avatar Legends, the role-playing game. And like I said, it went really well. The Kickstarter went really, really well. And since releasing, part of the Kickstarter stretch goals, you got additional. You got additional stuff for it. So, trying to see where my stuff. Yeah, so you got Avatar Legends, the role-playing game. You got Wang Shitong's adventure guide, which had a bunch of adventures, and I believe it had a few more playbooks. And then they recently released, or recently, I think within the last year or two, released the Republic City supplement, which gave, again, a couple new playbooks, some new moves, and some awesome cool stuff. And then right now, they are currently doing pre-orders for an Uncle Iroh expansion. That's really cool. So it's been going, like, it again just kind of showed up into 2021, and people were really excited about it, and now it is its whole thing. They even have, when I do my designing new dragons on these, we'll actually be using the Avatar Legends Nexus to build characters, because the character creator on there is actually really good. And makes it really easy to build characters in a very visual way. So yeah, overall, that's where Avatar Legends, the role-playing game, came from. So, moving on. The next thing we will talk about is the lore. Water, earth, fire, air. Long ago, the 4 nations lived together in harmony. Then, everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. Only the Avatar, master of all 4 elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. 100 years passed, and my brother and I discovered the new Avatar, an airbender named Aang. And although his airbending skills are great, he has a lot to learn before he's ready to save anyone. But I believe Aang can save the world. Now, some of you may notice that I sound nothing like the voice actress that plays Katara. I'm very sorry about that. I didn't even want to attempt it. And I like using my big, deep, booming voice. That was the intro to the Avatar The Last Airbender for most of the run of the cartoon. The very first episode had a much longer intro because they hadn't introduced us to Aang yet. But that sparked tons of fans learning about this incredibly detailed, amazing world that Avatar The Last Airbender and subsequent things have all been set in. The basic idea behind the world of Avatar is there are 4 nations that kind of control the world effectively. You have the Earth Kingdom, the Water Nation tribes, the Air Nomads, and or the Water tribes, and then the Fire Nation. And each one is actually based on a different culture. And that was one of the things that made Avatar in and of itself just so amazing, is they took real life inspiration from real cultures and did really great things with them. Like the Earth Kingdoms are based on feudal China and all of the kind of culture wrapped around that period, which is a massive period of time. The Fire Nation is based on Imperial Japan. The Water Tribes are based on the Inuit people in Canada and Alaska in North America. And then the Air Nomads are based. I believe they're based on effectively just kind of Buddhist principles in general, because Buddhism in and of itself spread all throughout the Middle East and Asia. And each time it got to a new place, it kind of absorbed different aspects of that. Like Buddhism in Japan absorbed a lot of Shinto, which was a traditional belief structure that already existed in Japan. And so Buddhism in Japan adopted a lot of the ideals of Shinto. So anyway, you have these 4 different nations, and each nation, the people in it, have a chance to be born as what are called benders, which are people that have the ability to manipulate one of the 4 elements. And those 4 elements, again, are earth, fire, water, and air. And the way that they learn to manipulate these elements is through an art form called bending, which is effectively martial arts. And again, the creators actually looked at very specific martial arts for each style of bending. So water was based on Tai Chi Chuan. Airbending was based on Ba Gao. Earthbending was based on Hung Gar. And firebending was based on Southern Shaolin Kung Fu. So you have some of the population, not the entirety of the population, that is born with this innate ability to bend the elements. And each nation, because you are effectively exclusively limited to that particular element, and it seems to have some sort of genetic aspect to it, kind of builds their society around these elements. The Earth Nation builds these incredibly large walls and creates these massive cities, sometimes on mountains, and they use earthbending to move the things throughout their cities. Like in Omashu, they have a delivery system where basically they have all these kind of chutes all the way through this city, and they have these giant rock containers that they put stuff in, and then earthbenders will just kind of push them down these chutes, and they can get stuff all throughout the city. Or if you go to Ba Sing Se, they have a giant train system in there, but the train system doesn't use steam or electricity or anything like that. It's entirely run by earthbenders who will sit there, and they have these giant rock trains that the earthbenders literally just earthbend all the way through this city. Whereas you look at something like the water tribes in the southern pole, they use water bending to basically build these snow cities. And in the northern tribe, they actually use water bending to create this massive ice fortress, for lack of a better term. The air nomads are literally that. They're nomadic because they air, and they learn to fly using these creatures called flying bison. They learn to ride them, and they have these gliders that they use that through air bending allow them to control wind currents and basically kind of fly permanently as long as they want to. And then the Fire Nation got really good at metallurgy and kind of steampunk. So it's very much... They have a navy full of these ironclad battleships. And they use metal in everything that they did to do, and a lot of their things are steam powered. So you have these 4 very, very different nations, and way back in the history of the world, there was one being who eventually got the ability to control all 4 elements. And that person was called the Avatar. And their job is effectively to keep peace between all 4 nations and to work as kind of a bridge between the spirit world and the human world. Because technically, all the bending abilities originally came from the spirit world. And so the Avatar is effectively this kind of combination judge, magistrate kind of the thing, a peacekeeper person. And then 100 years before Avatar: The Last Airbender, the last Avatar died, and what's supposed to happen is the Avatars reincarnated in the next nation in order. So it goes water, earth, fire, air, water, earth, fire, air. And so the last the last avatar before Aang was a firebender named Roku, and when he died, he was reincarnated into Aang. But right as that happened, the Fire Nation, realizing that the new Avatar would not be able to do all of the amazing stuff where he can bend all four elements simultaneously and is the most powerful bender in the world, he won't be able to do that for years. And so they decide to just go through and conquer the entire world. And they wind up wiping out the entirety of the airbenders, hoping that they're able to wipe them out before the Avatar can be reincarnated and thus break the cycle. And then they can just rule the world. And that's the world of Avatar: The Last Airbender. If you go forward to The Legend of Korra, it's basically dealing with after Aang was able to kind of get the nations back to peace, all four nations founded this city called Republic City. That was meant to be a place where people from all nations could come together, and it was supposed to be this utopian society. Everybody knows how utopian societies will work. And so that's kind of the lore. The interesting thing about Avatar Legends, the role-playing game, is there's actually... I have to find the right thing. They actually have, in the core rulebook, they actually have 5 different eras that you can play in. So lore-wise, you actually can kind of jump in various different places. You have what's called the Kyoshi era. And that is the earliest part, back when Avatar Kyoshi was the Avatar. And that's kind of an era of adventure and, exploration and things like that. It's very early in society. You have the Roku era, which is things are starting to simmer again right after Roku dies. Literally the day Roku dies, the Fire Nation goes out on their thing. So there's simmering tensions, and there's that little hint of war happening. You have the 100-Year War era, which is basically an entire 100-year where there is no Avatar and the Fire Nation is just going through and trying to conquer the world. You have the Aang era, which is a relatively short period of time compared to the other eras, where he simply is just trying to stop the Fire Nation for what they're doing, learn all the elements, and it's very kind of a rebellion-based era. And then you have the Korra era, which is dealing with the aftermath of the Fire Nation has been relegated back to being just a single country instead of trying to rule the world, and Republic City is a thing, and the four nations are trying to live together in a very odd couple style situation. So it's a really, really interesting, unique thing that has just tons of lore to go through. You have 2 TV series that both The Last Airbender ran for 3 seasons, Legend of Korra ran for 4. They have comic books that have expanded the lore. There is new lore that's introduced in the role-playing game. There is tons of lore to go on. But the very basic of the game itself is your character is going to exist in one of these eras. And in general, it is highly encouraged that none of the player characters ever play the Avatar. There's only one Avatar in the entire world, and in each one of these eras, the Avatar already exists. Kyoshi era, obviously, Kyoshi is the Avatar. The Roku era, Roku is the Avatar. The 100 Years War era, there is no Avatar. And then Aang era, Aang's the Avatar. Korra era, Korra is the Avatar. And they do that for a number of reasons. One, they want you to create your own stories in this world. And 2, the Avatar is significantly more powerful than anyone else on the planet. That's the reason they're the Avatar. And so having that much of a power imbalance can be extremely difficult to create interesting stories, because technically you could always just go, well, the Avatar uses their super magic powers and Deus Ex Machina everything. So, that being said, that is the lore of Avatar Legends, the role-playing game. Moving on. Let's talk about dice rolls and mechanics. So, I mentioned before, this is a Powered by the Apocalypse game. And again, as much as this isn't a requirement for a Powered by the Apocalypse game, there are a few things that you can expect from the majority of Powered by the Apocalypse games. The first is all of your rolls are going to be resolved with 2d6. To play Avatar Legends, you only need 2d6 to play, and it's really nice to be able to do that. Generally, you will have a target number that you need to hit, and they also have a trying to see if I can find the rolls here, what they're called. Rolling dice. There we go. They also have a variable success system. So you have like your average roll. You're trying to hit at least a 7. So if you hit a 7 to 9, you get what's called a hit. You succeed at what you're trying to do, but it's generally at some sort of a cost. It's called a weak hit. If you get a 10 plus on any of your rolls, it's called a strong hit, which means you succeed exactly what you want, and generally something additional happens that's good. Anything 6 or lower is a miss. It basically means that you didn't succeed at what you were doing, but because Avatar is a very much Avatar Legends is a very much narrative-focused RPG. It's not really something where if you miss, you just go, oh, I'm going to try again, and you just keep rolling until you get your hit. Even your misses are going to move the story forward in some way, shape, or form. Now, in addition to just rolling 2d6, there's a lot of times where you will add something to it. There are 4... Let me look at this. I'm just trying to remember what they specifically what the darn things are called. Dear Lord. Let's open up a playbook. At least then it'll tell me. I swear I have done this before. For the... Alright, so there are 4 different stats. There they are. For Pete's sake. I should have been more prepared for this. There are 4 different stats. They're creativity, focus, harmony, and passion. As with all Powered by the Apocalypse games, anytime you try to do something, you're going to do what's called a move. And a move is just kind of a generic... generic set of goals for something that you want to do. For example, let's go here, core moves. So one of the basic moves that any playbook can do is called assess a situation. And the way that assess a situation works is when you assess a situation, roll with creativity. So that means whatever your score in creativity is, you're going to add that to your roll. You might have a +1 or a +2. I believe the highest you can ever have is a +3 in anything. And at character creation, I believe +2 is the biggest you're going to ever have. So you roll with creativity. On a 7 to 9, ask 1 question. On a 10 plus, ask 2. Take +1 ongoing when acting on the answers. So some of the questions that you can ask the Game Master when you are assessing a situation is, what here can I use to blank? Who or what is the biggest threat? What should I be on the lookout for? what's my best way out in through, or who or what is in the greatest danger. So assess the situation is literally just trying to get information. And if you roll well on that, not only do you get information, you get bonuses anytime you're acting on that information. And that's kind of how running a Powered by the Apocalypse game goes. It is very much a conversation, and you will use these various moves to be able to do things. Like I said, there's a list of basic moves that any character can do. There are also these things called balance moves. Each character has two ideals that they try to kind of work between. Like for the adamant, their two ideals that they're trying to balance out are restraint versus results. So are they going to be a very results focused person where it's kind of the ends justify the means, or are they going to be a very restraint focused character that's going to limit themselves to ensure that they're not causing more issues than they're solving? And one of the core mechanics of the game is that where you are in your balance is going to shift as you play the game, and it gives you different modifiers. In addition to that, each playbook has moves that are exclusive to that playbook that you can choose when you're creating the character. Like again, for the adamant, one of the moves they have was called This Was a Victory. When you reveal that you have sabotaged a building, device, or vehicle right as it becomes relevant, mark fatigue and roll with passion. On a hit, your work pays off, creating an opportunity for you and your allies at just the right time. On a 7 to 9, the opportunity is fleeting. Act fast to stay ahead of the consequences. On a miss, your action is ill-judged and something or someone you care about is hurt as collateral damage. So This Is a Victory is basically almost kind of a retcon style thing where I'm going to use my This Is a Victory move, and I'm going to say that the car that's coming at us, I was able to cut the brake lines. This is on it. And then you roll to see how effective that was. And, you roll high. It's like you cut the brake lines and they go straight past you and you're perfectly fine. And they like fall off into a river or something. On a fail, you still cut the brake lines, but instead of them going past you, it accidentally hits one of your friends and they're injured in some way. Or an innocent bystander is taken out by the car, and now you have to kind of deal with that. So everything very, very narrative focused, and even combat is kind of built around the idea that you will be telling a story more than you will be more than you will be like just building stats and things like that. Each your hit points into the things like that are built into two different systems. You have what are called fatigue, which every character has 5 fatigue, and then you also have conditions. And conditions basically kind of work as debuffs and also kind of additional hit points. And each different condition not only will make it more difficult for you to succeed in certain situations, like the afraid condition gives you a -2 to any intimidate or call someone out moves. In order to get rid of that afraid condition, you have to do something to overcome your fear. So again, very narrative focused. When you're in combat, you have these things called fighting techniques. And that's where, and we'll talk more about it in character creation, but that's where things start getting really interesting, because in addition to choosing your playbook, you're also going to choose a training, which can be any one of the 4 bending styles: earth, water, fire, or air, or weapons, or technology, or gadgets. And that is going to kind of modify how you do everything in the game. If you are an earthbender, then if you use pinpoint aim, which is a fighting technique from the adamant, it is described as take the time you need to line up a perfect shot, become prepared. That's one of the positive kind of status conditions you can have. In the next exchange, if you advance an attack, roll with focus or passion, your choice. If you strike, you do not have to mark fatigue to choose what you inflict. So basically, pinpoint aim is kind of gets you ready to do something, and then it improves other things. So an earthbender might, grip their feet in the ground and kind of connect them to the ground so that when they throw their next boulder, they have extra kind of restraint. Or maybe they're going to be earthbending a small pebble to, break something far away. And so they're pinpoint aim, just getting themselves perfectly right. Maybe they're even earthbending themselves a little target to help them aim correctly. So that kind of thing. Every time you do something, it's going to somehow involve your training, which is really, really interesting. So yeah, for the most part, I mean, that's really the mechanics in and of themselves. Is you have moves, and then moves in combat are called fighting techniques, and your fighting techniques can be, you have basic techniques that every single character can use. You have techniques that are exclusive to your training. And as you play the game, you can learn new techniques through a number of different ways and grow and things. So, yeah. Combat in and of itself is done in kind of an interesting method. Do core moves, playbook, and running the game. Running fight scenes. So a fight scene... Yeah, I know. Really? You're not going to tell me. This is annoying me. Many scenes of conversation, core elements, starting the game. I have read this book so many times, and I just cannot remember where they actually explain combat exchanges. There we go. So... when combat exchanges happen, you actually have this interesting thing where you will choose an approach, and there are three different approaches. There are defend and maneuver, advance and attack, and evade and observe. And each technique is going to be connected to one of those three approaches. And each approach uses a different stat. So defend and maneuver rolls with focus, advance and attack rolls with passion, evade and observe rolls with either creativity or harmony. And so it starts off with the bad guys choosing their approach and the good guys choosing their approach, and then everyone reveals their approaches all at once. And defend and maneuver, people always go first, players first, then the enemies, then advance and attack, then evade and observe. And everything that happens all happens at the same time. So just because your advance and attack removed someone from play that was going to use evade and observe, or your advance and attack was able to take out the enemy that was advancing and attacking at you, everything that happens within that particular approach happens simultaneously. So they still get to have their full turn to do their move. So it's a really interesting combat system. And again, I believe it's typical of Powered by the Apocalypse games in general. But that's Dice Rolls and Mechanics. Moving on. Let's talk about character creation. So as I mentioned before, when you create a character, your first choice is generally going to be which playbook do I want to use. And your playbook is effectively your class, but it's more than like you're a rogue, you're a ranger. Your playbook is going to combine kind of motivation and fighting style and a bunch of different things into one thing. I've been talking about the Adamant a lot. Let's move to a different one. Let's talk about I have to go here and go here. And there, that makes it easier. So again, the Adamant is the one we've been talking about a lot. Let's talk about the Guardian. So the Guardian is one of the core playbooks that exists in the core book. And the way that the Guardian works, let's actually go to here. So the Bold. The bold fights to live up to their self-image and earn others' trust and confidence. Play the bold if you want to build your reputation and leadership skills. Self-doubting, boastful, clever, curious. The bold is sure that they have it in them to be someone great. A great warrior, an exceptional artist, a master bender, even if they aren't really there yet. Even if others make sure that the bold knows they aren't there yet. They will be someday. They just, oh, I'm doing the bold, not the guardian, but yeah, let's go with the bold. They just need to work up to it, okay? They're working on it. The bold is trying to prove themselves. They may present to the world a confident, capable face, may even boast about their excellence, but that's nearly always a facade, an attempt to sell themselves on their own skills, as much as convince anyone else. But at the same time, the bold isn't all talk. They are committed to making the world better, especially for their friends, their family, and the people they care about. So as you can see, the bold is still a relatively kind of generic term. It's not telling you like, okay, you are an earthbender that does this and you play this and you do this. No, it's giving you kind of a goal. You want to be someone powerful. You want to be someone important. And that's going to relate to your training. That's going to relate to your relationship with other people. But it leaves it open enough that you're able to kind of create a really interesting, unique character. They have other questions that are built into the core book that help you kind of define what specifically your character is. Like for the bold, why do you feel the need to prove yourself so badly? Who epitomizes the kind of big, bold figure you hope to be? And other things like that. And then you will always have at least one or two connections that are supposed to be made with someone else in the group. So the two connections for the bold are blank scoffs at me and my plans. One day I'll show them what I can do. And then blank has a pretty good head on their shoulders. They're a great sounding board for my ideas. So again, because it's a very narrative focused, it's a very narrative focused game. You have these connections, you have these other things that are meant to help you to tell an interesting story. The two ideals that you try to balance between are self-reliance and to trust. So the idea of I'm going to do things on my own and the only person that I can rely on is myself versus trust, I'm going to rely on other people to help me through that. So when you're building a character, again, or that was the Guardian, sorry. The bold is loyalty versus confidence. Sorry. I don't know why I keep going to the wrong page, but I do. So loyalty versus confidence. So loyalty to your friend versus confidence and basically kind of self-focus of I can do this or my friends can help me to do this. So again, when you are creating a character in this, the first thing you're going to start with is choosing your playbook. And part of choosing your playbook is going to be, okay, what kind of motivations do I want my character to have? After you do that, you will have kind of some background stuff. Like, again, you have your history questions, you have your connections. You also have a thing called Legacy of Excellence in the bold, where you have dedicated yourself to accomplishing great, exciting deeds and becoming worthy of the trust others place in you. Choose 4 drives to mark at the start of play. When you fulfill a marked drive, strike it out and mark growth or clear condition. So they have a bunch of different things, like get a fancy new outfit, show mercy or forgiveness to a dangerous person, pull off a ridiculous stunt. At the beginning of a play session, you choose 4 of those to focus on in this play session, and that's going to give you kind of goals, personal goals for your character. You want to pull off at least one of those while you are playing, and they're important to your character in some way. And each playbook has something different that's meant to give them that additional kind of personal motivation. Like the Guardian has Protector's Burden. You basically choose a ward, choose someone that you are the guardian of, that you protect them. And there's various aspects of your relationship with them built in. If we go to the Hammer, You always have an adversary, one who represents the things you're trying to smash through. Tyranny, inequality, war, large and more dangerous concepts that, to you at least, this one person embodies. So you name an adversary, and then you choose a goal you have for that adversary. You want to capture them, you want to discredit them, dispose them, things like that. Each playbook has an aspect of it that gives you that kind of personal motivation. And that personal motivation can change throughout a session, throughout a campaign, all those different things. After you kind of fill out that legacy of excellence, you're also going to choose moves. Again, each playbook has specific moves that are exclusive to that playbook. And you generally will have a choice between about 4 or 5, and you get to choose 2 of them. And then you also get a fighting teak. I'm going to try this again. You have a fighting technique exclusive to your playbook. Like for the bold, their fighting technique is called tag team. It's a defend and maneuver to the technique. Work with an ally against the same foe. Choose an engaged foe and an ally. Double any fatigue conditions or balance shifts that ally inflicts upon that foe. So it's a way to kind of buff a friend. In addition to that, you also generally, depending on how you're playing, get to choose one other technique based on your training. That's the other thing that you get to choose when you're building your character is your training. Again, you can be one of the 4 kinds of benders, so water, earth, fire, or air. You can be a weapons master, or you can be a technology master. And once you choose that, you also need to choose a particular fighting style. And that is very much kind of like specializations in Essence to the 20, where there isn't actually a list. You just want to choose something distinctive. So if you are an earthbender, maybe your fighting style is using 2 giant earth hammers that are linked by a chain. Or if you are a firebender, maybe your particular focus is on making fireworks and flashes like Jubilee from the X-Men. Or if you're a weapon master, maybe the weapon that you use and you focus on is the rope dart, which is a phenomenal way to beat the shit out of yourself. I've played around and tried my hand at learning rope dart. It is a remarkably difficult thing to learn. But Jackie Chan uses it in a lot of his movies. Have you ever seen the one with Owen Wilson where he plays a cowboy? Shanghai Noon. He actually creates a rope dart out of a horseshoe and a rope. And he uses it really, really well, and it's really cool. Anyway, so yes, while you're building this, you're choosing your moves, your fighting techniques, you're going to choose your training, you're going to choose your particular fighting style, which is completely unique to you. And then you also have 2 other kind of role-playing aids that you get to choose, which are your background, which is military, outlaw, urban, monastic, privileged, or wilderness, and you can choose up to 2 of those to kind of mix and match to kind of give you more of a background. And then your demeanor, which is either impatient, sensitive, affable, enthusiastic, talkative, or impetuous. Again, neither of these things are going to have a massive impact mechanically, but because the game is so focused on storytelling and role-playing and narrative, they will help you to kind of guide how your character interacts with any scene. So yeah, I mean, building a character is not... and you also get to choose your stats, which is a rather simple process. Your core book in and of itself will give you bonuses and penalties to particular things. Like the bold gets a +1 to creativity, a +1 to focus, a 0 to harmony, and a -1 to passion. And then you actually get to add 1 more point somewhere else. So if you wanted to be really good at creativity, you could move that to a +2, or maybe you just don't like that passion is a negative, so you add a +1 to that and turn it to as a 0. So you're no longer hurting yourself when you're doing things like striking, because that requires using passion. So yeah, that's really character creation. Moving on. let's talk about monsters. Now, as far as monsters in and of themselves, there's not really quote unquote monsters in Avatar. I mean, there are creatures that exist, but a lot of time, because of the kind of harmony with nature kind of aspect of it, you're generally not fighting monsters very often. More often than not, you're fighting other NPCs. And in the core book, the kind of monster manual aspect of it is just a list of NPCs. And they're actually pretty simple to run. I'm trying to see if they have yeah. So each NPC in general is going to have a drive, is going to have a set of a principle. They're going to have some conditions that they like to inflict, and they're going to have a set amount of fatigue. Unlike players where they get 5 fatigue and then 5 conditions, and if you get all of those done to you, you're out of this scene. You don't have to die or anything, you just can't interact in the scene. NPCs basically just have a fatigue track. And once you finish the fatigue track, they are done. In addition to that, each NPC is going to have at least one technique that they specialize in. Again, they can always use any basic techniques that exist, but they will also have at least one specialized technique that they're really good at. And the quote-unquote monster manual for Avatar Legends is literally just 2 pages that has minor NPCs, major NPCs, master NPCs, and NPC groups. So remarkably simple. Like a minor NPC might be a town guard. And minor NPCs don't even have a technique that they use. They just have fatigue. So they just use basics. Major NPCs might be a champion pit fighter who has a little bit more fatigue than normal. They have 5 fatigue compared to the 3 fatigue of guards or minor NPCs. And then they have 2 techniques that they're good at. Charge and forceful blow. So creating NPCs into the things like that is actually not particularly massively difficult. It's really just kind of figuring out the story that you want to tell and the people that need to kind of exist, and then giving them a few techniques and other things like that to make things will work the way you want them to. So yeah, monsters really simple. Moving on. Let's talk about equipment and items. I'm not certain that this is normal for all Powered by the Apocalypse games, but the few that I've looked at, this is relatively common. There really aren't any quote-unquote magic items or special equipment that you can buy, new armor, anything like that. You don't have an AC or anything like that. It's all dice rolls and seeing if you survive and marking fatigue and all these other things. So as far as picking up new items, new equipment and stuff like that, it really doesn't happen. You have your training, and it's just kind of assumed that whatever you need for your training to work, you just have. If you're an airbender, you probably have an airbending staff, which can turn into a glider, because that's just typical of being an airbender. You don't get a +1 airbending staff of whirlwinds or anything, you just have it. If you're a weapons master, you always have your weapons, and you really don't need to buy a new sword every time you get to a new city or something like that, because there isn't any +1 sword of monster slaying or anything. You have your sword, you use it to use your techniques. Something that does kind of work in a way, kind of like magic items, is your techniques. So again, as I mentioned before, there are fighting techniques that you can learn as you grow. And they're intended to be narrative rewards. You go, you find a master, they will teach you this technique, and when you first learn it, the technique itself is called learned. And basically, in order to use it, you have to roll at least a 10 or higher on your approach in combat. So you can't use a learned technique unless you effectively get a hard hit. Once you've used it at least once, it now becomes prepared. It's easier to use. And then after you've used it a lot and some narrative things happen, you can call it mastered, and that makes it even easier for you to use. Part of the kind of exploration aspect of an Avatar Legend game is going to be finding new techniques effectively. So instead of going out and finding a cool new sword, you might find, let's say you're a waterbender, and so you discover the ability to use a technique called Breath of Ice, or Stream the Water, or Water Whip. These are all things that are built into water bending, and there are some specialized techniques, things like Freezing Blood, which is actually a blood bending technique, or Ice Prison, very unique ones. And that's true about every single training. There's earthbending techniques. There are 3 different kind of specialized earthbending. They are seismic sense, lava, and metal bending. For fire bending, there's 2 different specialized versions of fire bending: lightning bending and combustion bending. Airbending doesn't have any, at least in the core book, doesn't have any particular special techniques, but they do have rare techniques, and the same thing is true for weapon techniques and technology techniques. So, yeah, no real equipment or items, but your techniques kind of fill that void of things that make your character more interesting and powerful that aren't kind of built into character creation. So, moving on. Let's talk about GMing the game. Running an Avatar, the Avatar Legends campaign is interesting to say the least. I myself have played Avatar Legends, and I have run an Avatar Legends game. And they are super, super fun. But Avatar Legends in and of itself is set up like a TV show. And what I mean by that is you generally separate your sessions into deviations based on what you would see on a TV show. So each individual location is a scene, and when you start in a particular area, the GM is intended to set the scene. They explain what's going on. They explain what everything looks like, what everything is there, and they explain why the characters are there. Very much like a narrator starting an episode. A combination of scenes can be referred to as an episode, and generally an episode is a single session, or sometimes it'll be multiple sessions depending on how long you play. But then you have an episode, and the episode an episode is basically a collection of scenes that all relate to a centralized theme of some sort. We're trying to get out of the prison. We are trying to find a waterbending scroll. We are trying to convince this Earth Nation village that's been captured by the Fire Nation to rise up. Things like you would see that. And then a collection of episodes can be considered a season. And then a collection of seasons can be considered a series. And so your overall campaign would effectively be a series. Each season is going to have a particular goal. If we're talking about Avatar: The Last Airbender, book 1 was called Water. That was the first season, and it was about Aang learning water bending. Book 2 was Earth. Book 3 was Fire. So each book was about Aang mastering a particular element. However, does that mean that every single episode was just Avatar going into the water, or Aang just going into the water and going, "Look at me, splashy, splashy, splashy," in Book 1 water? No. In order to get to a place where they could learn from a waterbending master, they had to go from the South Pole all the way to the opposite side of the world, to the North Pole, and along the way they stopped and helped people and met people. And so there's always going to be kind of side things, but your season should have an overarching goal for it. And your campaign in and of itself, the entire purpose of Avatar: The Last Airbender was to master all 4 elements to stop the Fire Nation from taking over the world. Like, that was your campaign. So as a GM, when you are starting up an Avatar: The Last Airbender game, you have to kind of figure out, is this going to be a single one-shot? Is this going to be just a single standalone episode that doesn't really connect to anything else? Are we going to make this an entire series where the group itself comes together and they have a goal that they try and reach over this series? Is this going to be a season? Is this going to be a multi-season series? Is this going to be an entire campaign where they will meet one goal and then they will have a new goal that they have to deal with, and then another new goal? Those are all things that you need to kind of discuss with your players when you're building characters. I've mentioned this many times before. I do not believe Session Zero is nearly as important as D&D YouTube claims it is. They have turned it into this kind of fetish that doesn't need to be anywhere near as present as it is. That being said, it is still a useful tool. And for something like Avatar Legends, if you're not just running a one-shot, Session Zero is an extremely useful and almost necessary tool to figure out exactly how you're going to group things. But if you are GMing it, you do need to understand kind of the cinematography of telling a story through that methodology. You know, each scene should be set up in a similar way that it would be set up in a script. Which again, if you have DM'd before or GM'd any system before, you should be familiar with how to set a scene. It is one of the kind of primary concerns of any game master, is being able to go, okay, you're in a room, it does this, it looks like this. That's effectively setting the scene. Because of the narrative focus of Avatar Legends, setting the scene is more than simply just explaining what's there. You also have to give some context to the characters. You might give the characters themselves some prompts about, you're here because of this, you're here because of this, and that's every single scene. So sometimes it does feel a little bit overwhelming, but that's one of the other kind of aspects that I love about Avatar Legends, is it encourages the GM to include the players in setting the scene. So you might be going, okay, you are in you're in a market right now. John, what is one thing that's here in the market? And you are encouraged to have the players help you set the scene. While it is effectively your responsibility to make sure the scene is set, it is not your responsibility to set the scene by yourself. And I think even if you aren't a huge fan of Avatar in general, this is probably one of the greatest things any GM can learn, is how to include players in setting a scene. So many people assume that the GM has to basically create this entire world before even getting to the table, and if you don't, you're a bad GM. No, let the players build some of the world, and let the players build some of the world right then. You don't have to pre-write everything. The world doesn't have to exist until the players are experiencing it. Some GMs really like to create the entirety of the world before the players ever see it, and that can be very good for immersion, but it can be just as good immersion it can be just as immersive if the players get to sit down and go, oh yeah, I totally see this over there. I can see a cart selling fire flakes. And then you go, okay, Lisa, what do you smell in the air right now? What's the first thing that you notice as you walk into this air? Oh, I smell incense because there's an incense seller over here, and he's demonstrating some of the various things. Okay, cool. And then Bill, what's the first thing that you hear as you come in here? Oh, I hear a bunch of kids running around because their parents are trying to shop and they're just trying to keep themselves entertained. So I hear these kids kind of play fighting and yelling at each other and things. And so now, instead of the GM having to come up with all of these different sensory things, you can literally just pick a player and go, here's a sense. What do you get from that scent? Okay, here's another sense. What do you get from that sense? And let them build the world with you. And it makes it very, very fun to be able to do. Now, the first time you do this, a lot of players, especially if they're new players, or they're established players that are used to playing something like D&D where they're just told where they are, will clam up at first. So be sure that you're encouraging people and assuring them that, hey, there isn't really a wrong answer unless you do something like, okay, so, Will, what do you see here? I see the Avatar, and he's got the person that I hate in his hand, and he's just frozen him, and we win the game. That's not how setting the scene works. But as long as you're doing something that makes sense, encourage the players. Yes, and them a lot. The more you encourage them, the more you allow them to help you build the world, the easier it's going to be as you move forward to every time a new scene happens. You're going to have the players excited because they're going to be helping you build this new scene. It also creates a lot of focus at the table because if they are helping to build a scene, bare minimum, they're going to remember the aspect of the scene that they added to it. And they're going to listen to the other players to know what they're adding so that they know what they need to add and things like that. So GMing the Game is remarkably fun. Very collaborative, very interesting. And it does kind of get rid of a lot of the kind of busy work. And you're never going to have a, like, quote unquote travel scene where the only thing that happens is they go from A to B. You cut that part out. If you are having a travel scene, the reason you're having the travel scene is something happened there. So anything that doesn't really move the story forward in any way, shape, or form, you can just talk about it happened off camera. And then you can immediately, your next scene that you set is when something happens. So it's a very very much kind of action-focused game where the only things that you're talking about are the action scenes, the scenes that move the story forward in some way, shape, or form. Whether those are combat action, whether that's political action, where people are kind of getting into scenes, whether it's emotional action, where the things that are happening are creating new relationships between the character, but it's always when something is happening, not a transition from one place to another. So, yeah, GMing the Game is super, super fun. Moving on. Let's talk about some additional resources. As I mentioned before, there is a website called Demiplane that has a bunch of different what they call nexuses. They have a Candela Obscura Nexus, which is brand spanking new. They have a Pathfinder 2e, Avatar Legends, Vampire the Masquerade, Marvel Multiverse RPG, the Alien RPG, and they have announced that they're going to have a Starfinder 2nd Edition Nexus coming up there. So if you just go to app.demiplane.com, you can choose and go to the Avatar Nexus, and there they have a character creator, which is really, really nice. They have some stuff available for free, but you can also buy all of the books that exist. The Quick Start Guide is free, and it has a few stuff in there. And then, like I said, you can get the core book. You can get Republic City, Washi Tong's library and extras. There's a bunch of adventures that were all stretch goals: Earth and Root, Fire and Brimstone, Ash and Steel. They're all just pre-written adventures that you can run. And then the newest one that is coming out soon is called Uncle Iroh's Adventure Guide. So you can buy all the stuff there, and the quick start guide is really nice because it has some stuff for free. So that's always a great place to go for stuff. In addition to that Avatar, let's go Legends. There we go. Magpie Games is the company that actually publishes Avatar Legends. And so if you just go to magpiegames.com/pages/Avatar RPG, or just type Avatar Legends into Google, it's the first thing that comes out. You can get literally everything there. You can get a start. They have a starter set. They have the core book. They have special cover core books. They have all this other stuff. They also sell, and I'll show you guys, because I got it as part of the Kickstarter. You can also get things like you can get things like this. These are my dice, and as you can see, like these ones here are technology dice. So the 6 is replaced with the technology training symbol, or this is a weapon die. And you can see, again, it's all just D6s. This is the actual box that they come in. So I believe it comes with 2 of each die. So that you can use them for all of your rolling. I also got this cool thing. It is a White Lotus Paisho tile, which you can still buy on there. And then you can also get this thing called the Combat Action deck, which is, I'll show you guys here, something that I think is super cool and interesting. And this is all stuff that you can get on Magpies. This is not sponsored by Magpie. I do not know them. I just like the system in and of itself. So one of the things that you have are the status cards. So this is the favored status, and on the app's opposite side, that is the doomed status. So these are positive and negative statuses. There's a bunch of them that you can use in play, and then I think each one of the playbooks, or at least most the playbooks, will have these things. So as you can see, like this is a defend and maneuver technique. That's a cool thing, like that. So you can use these to kind of declare what you're going to be doing before you do it. And it's cool, and it's interesting, and it's fun. Are they all the same? What are they? Yeah, oh, there's actually a bunch of... there's ones for each one of the playbooks, I believe, in the core book. So, as you can see with these 3 different ones, you have ones that are jet, and they have a defend and maneuver, an advance and attack, and an evade and observe technique for each one. And each one of these is the same the thing. But basically, when you're declaring your approach, you can use one of these 3 cards and just place it face down. So it's like, okay, I've got my approach declared, and then when everyone has to reveal, you all reveal, and I'm doing evade and observe, and it shows the different things you can do for basic moves for evade and observe. So it's really nice. I think it's absolutely phenomenal and super fun if you play in person. If you play online, they're not quite as useful unless everybody has their own copy. But as far as additional resources and stuff like that, like I said, there is crap tons of stuff that you can buy on Magpie Games website that just has tons and tons and tons of cool stuff. Like I said, I kickstarted it, and so I got all this stuff as part of the Kickstarter, and I loved every single bit of it. So, yeah, moving on. Two final thoughts. Overall, Avatar Legends, the RPG, is a phenomenal game. Everything about the game just thrills me beyond recognition. Like, it's just really cool. The Powered by the Apocalypse system works so well for Avatar and games like it. The training system is really fun. The particular fighting style is really cool because it allows you to kind of create your own really special, unique character. The framing the scenes and combat encounters and role-playing encounters and things like that, and the move-based system is so incredibly fun and interesting to work with that I really cannot recommend it higher. Is just a super fun system. Like I said, I have run it myself once, and I've actually played in a game and had an absolute blast playing it. I actually played, if I remember correctly, I think I played a firebender that did fireworks. Like, my fighting style was fireworks, and I had so much fun playing in it. The game itself should be on Zelda Universe's Twitch channel, because it was part of our hiatus between Campaign 1 and Campaign 2 for the Realms games. So if you guys want to see that, there's stuff there. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. As always, I'm going to be doing some Designing New Dragons, where we're going to build a bunch of characters with it, and we'll see where it goes. Otherwise, that is me all for me today. As always, please again remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All those things are super important. In the comments down below, what is your favorite training? Are you one of the benders? Do you have a favorite bending? Are you a big fan of fire bending or lightning bending or lava bending? Are you more of a water bender who kind of moves and goes with the flow? Do you like the non-bending people? Like Jet with his twin hook swords, or things like that, or even the technology people, like the group that eventually took over one of the air temples in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Or if we go more Korra, in Legend of Korra, Asami would be a technology-based character where she can fight, but she also has like stun gloves and other really cool things like that. So what is your favorite training technique? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that's all for me today, and I will see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.